anyways, you guys all probably know who I am. My name is Brian from Artsoft. I've got some more people that we've added to our development team. Steve Murphy is out front. Steve Murphy is the programmer that is turning into the man behind the curtain. He's pretty well shielded from everybody because I end up working with most of our OEMs and stuff like that, trying to get things figured out what we're going to work on, try and get what we're going to do for projects. Then Steve and I get together, we work on how it's going to work, how we're going to architecture it, all that other stuff. So he's been instrumental in the design and implementation of 4. So it was really a collaboration between he and I. We took work that I had done over the past years, like toolpath stuff, revamping a G-code interpreter and all that, and then we just started plugging the pieces together and making the interfaces for everything to connect up. And we'll go over some of that later on in the talk. Hopefully it doesn't get too in-depth because I don't really want to bore you about it, but I would like to show you why it's taken us so long to do what we've been trying to do. The other one over here is Todd Monto. Todd is in charge of dealing with sales, marketing, yeah. He also is the one that is going to be in charge of documentation, and hopefully, how many of you have seen our new wizard set that we came out with? Has anybody seen it?
When did you come out with it?
A month?
A month ago?
Oh, I haven't seen it.
It is, Ron's going to do a talk on it. It's hands down the best conversational type package, wizard, or text-driven, I don't know, however you want to say it. Not CAM, but CAM. There is no drawing in it. You can't like draw a line, you can't draw a circle, but what you can do is make a circle, you can make a pocket, you can make a rectangle. And we went through, redesigned it, uses parts of Mach4, uses it uses the toolpath out of 4, and then it also uses some ideas that we came up with for being able to double click on it, edit it, update on the fly. It's really a slick setup. If you're not into CAM stuff and you want a quick way to make G-code, I would check it out. It's on the web page, and like I said, Ron will probably show it. Yeah. But in that, you'll see that Ron and Todd worked together and made a help document for it, and that's kind of what we're trying to strive for with 4. That when it gets released, you'll see documentation, some examples, example scripts. We're trying to make it a full package so that when it comes out, it's not, you don't look at it and go, oh, this wasn't that great. We want you to get it and have a nice experience with it. So to generate all that stuff in the background is taking a phenomenal amount of time. Because some of you use Modbus, some of you use serial devices, you need scripting, you need to be able to change the screen. As soon as you start adding all those things up, the time it takes us to develop it just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. So that Art did a wonderful bit of software, but to replicate it, he made an awful lot of expectations. So we're trying to reach those expectations.
The other point that you brought up is like finding the software, like our website. 2 or 3 of you knew about the software. It's almost impossible to find it on the website, even if you know it's there. So it's within probably a month, we're going to have a brand new website. It's going to be much easier to find everything, and what's new is going to be on the front page, so you can know exactly what's new and what's coming out.
Are you still going to offer then the old, is that the NFS suite?
This one is actually totally different. It's totally autonomous. It can run separately, and rather too, we're going to add a post-processor on it. You'll be able to make code for other machines. We want to add actually, quite possibly, something to send serial comms, so that you could actually send programs to a machine, or do that through a G-code editor right inside it. But those are a couple of things that we would like to do. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but it has that capability. So you can produce from that G-code to run Mach3 right now.
Okay.
So it's really helpful. It also is cross-platform. We will be doing a Linux build for it as well. So that's going to allow people that like to use Linux CNC to use it or something like that. Also, Mach4 is cross-platform. We'll be spinning up a Linux version with, and our rule on the Linux stuff is, we'll sell it, but it's going on machines that are already configured. Because OpenGL issues, trying to get the video drivers installed, stuff like that, those can be some major hurdles. And honestly, you're not gonna like us if we make you have to do it. So if it comes as more of an appliance, I think the user experience will be a lot better. So already set up and running. So we'll be working with some OEMs to provide computers pre-installed. Any questions on that stuff before we get started?
Yeah, so this Wizard thing is a separate product,
Totally separate.
so what's the cost on that?
That's 75. So
And what if you're already licensed, already have the Wizard license from
what we
Mach4?
did right now, and we haven't brought the price up, is we said, because we know a lot of our users that know what we're doing, we have made an introductory price.
That's the Wizard running on a tablet. It runs, I blew me away, it runs fine. This is a $500 Windows tablet, and the Wizard runs, there's a USB plug on the side of it. It also runs Mach. So that's standalone Wizard version.
Now,
So-
so Wizard's just still mill, or are they mill at like?
Right now, it's just Bill. We'll be coming up with different packages, and the licensing for it. Licensing, unfortunately, has completely changed for us. Licensing is now on it's something called node locked. It's locked per PC, okay? And that really stinks, but what we've done for the hobbyist is, on Mach4, you will still have the ability to have as many licenses as you want at your place, as long as it is for a hobby. If you're cutting parts because you want to make a steam engine, and you're not cutting for money, people aren't paying you to produce parts, then we say, use as many times as you want, have fun, and make stuff. Now, if you're cutting for money and you want to have support and everything else, we actually are coming out with an industrial package. We've hired more support people. Brett isn't here right now, he's out on the floor, but we have hired Brett Price full-time, and we have Andrew Mitchell full-time. We have 2 full-time support staff to answer questions and do things, and we will be doing phone calls and all that other stuff. And we do remote support sessions. So we're ramping up the support to handle more industrial people, but at the same time, we're not trying to leave the whole hobbies behind. We're trying to keep that all the same. So probably licensing will get abused a little bit, but
Okay.
there's not much.
Back to my original question, I guess.
Okay,
does
so-
my current
No, it does not.
Wizard license work on the new version?
No,
No.
because it's node locked. And the reason we did that is we had to, so unfortunately. But what we did do is we put in an introductory period for it, so you can get it for $50 instead of $75 right now.
Okay.
So the prices, we started it out lower, saying, if you're into it enough to buy the quote-unquote beta, then we'll swap it over to release. And I think, as far as I know, it's passed pretty well.
I've done about 3 bugs on it. I had one yesterday. Guy said it was cutting parts off size, and then this morning I had an email that said, oops, I was measuring with a bad caliper. So we've only had 3 or 4 bug reports on it, which kind of surprised. Well, we had done a lot of inside testing, and I've done a half a dozen releases to a list of about 10 folks that Brian and I came up with. So it had some experience. But so far it's been really good.
Sorry about that. Does the new Wizard package work with Mach4?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, you can produce parts with it today. And Ron's been sneaking hobby type stuff in it, like links and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
you may even see a whole hobby version of it come out. We will go back and we're going to re-architecture it a little bit, which won't change the outward appearance too much. But as soon as we get that done, we're going to start up with turn and plasma and a few others, and maybe even a wood one for doing finger joints and stuff like that, to try and make those things a little bit easier. Because it really does make machining a lot more fun. Okay.
Mach4, Wizard delivered.
Well, that was the intro. Okay, so what's new? We did basically cover all that stuff, and that's why I did it. That's our talk. Is we're going to go more into depth into the detail of Mach4. Now, Todd made the slide, so he may have to come over and actually do it. Yeah, so new products. We've got Mach4. That's myself and Steve, and then the newfangled mill wizard is really Ron and I. You did just a little bit of work on it too, didn't you? Yeah. So,
Well, he fixed my machine so the damn thing would compile.
yeah, that's the worst part with doing this. Yeah, you don't want to. It's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, we also are going to be running some different versions. So you're going to see a lot of different things that are labeled Mach4 with something added to the name. There's something called Light, and Light is for OEMs who manufacture small machinery for a consumer market, extremely high volume, and it's just configured to be what it is. So picture someone like Sherline or someone like that, or even something that you didn't even know had a CNC control in it. It would be just this, it would look like this monolithic little block. It's not, it's actually made of components, but you just turn it on and it runs. You don't get to write scripts, you don't get to do anything. You just, it's a printer, okay? So you'll see this coming out. Mach4 Hobby, this is what is meant for you guys. This will be selling at a $200 price point retail, and people will get discounts on it and stuff for distributing and all that other stuff. So that's all set up through Todd. So if we have any OEMs that want to deal with stuff, that's who you deal with, not me. I write the stuff, I don't sell it. But this is full featured. There are a few key components that are missing from this than from this one, which is Mach4 Industrial. This is full featured. It's greatly expanded customer support. I don't know how much we can stretch that. We've added the capacity to add up to 9 support people, new phone systems, new everything. So we've been gearing up everything in the background to get ready for that. So we'll be doing phone support, and it's really meant for manufacturing environments where every second counts. You know, it's kind of a sales thing. If you really need your machine to run, and that's why we try and differentiate between this one. This is a hobby, this is a living.
Is this a good time to talk about then switching from Mach3 to Mach4 and the price points and all that?
Yep, so Mach3 right now is priced at $175. It's been that price for quite a while now. So we said, okay, it's a new build. We'll bring it up to $200, but no more. We didn't want to pull you up to this price. This one, what's retail? Yeah, this is $1,200. Okay, and then there's another one beyond this one, which is phenomenally expensive, but it does things that you don't even want to think about. Matter of fact, I don't want to think about it, and I know you don't.
Are there any price breaks for current Mach3 license holders, or?
Unfortunately, no.
That's something you couldn't do, huh?
Well, if this was something that we had expanded on Mach3 from, I would say yes. It shares a name because unfortunately we got stuck with it, but it is really brand new software. So
brand new, ground up, brick by brick build. Okay.
Yeah, that's why we didn't do it. It's just we've got too much money into it to give it away.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
I wasn't necessarily saying giving away, but I didn't know if you would have the ability
We will
to give any
some
discounts
sort
or.
of introductory period. So when it comes out in beta, when you see it on our webpage for beta, you won't be paying $200. You'll be paying something less.
Okay.
So we are going to do some discounted thing.
So there will be an introductory discount.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be like 150 or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you expecting the time frame for the beta release?
You know?
Is it,
Gee, nobody's ever asked
is it
that
days,
question.
weeks, months, or
It
years?
changes daily.
Yeah, it's all.
Every day it moves out a day.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and then sometimes it moves up. Those are rare.
Yeah.
But it really, I don't know right now. We're in the screen design phase, and if you look at, we're going to hopefully put a slide later that actually shows you the modules, and I'll go over the different modules and what ones we did first and how we did it. We strategically built certain blocks, and now we're on this uppermost level block that is the Customizable GUI is what we call it. So it's actually called Mach4 GUI. This Mach4 GUI is what makes you put on your own DROs. It makes it so you can have LEDs, move things on the screen and make it yours. When we did the light, which was supposed to release but never made it out because of some hardware issues, that is a static interface. So if you look at what we're running out on the floor, this static interface is what we're running. And the one for you guys is almost done. So we're going to show that to you today.
When are you going to terminate support for Mach3?
Oh, I didn't want to talk about that. That's a bone of contention internally right now. My thought is to let it run its course and die its own death, and then keep supporting it. It will be, we probably will support it for quite a long.
3 years, 5 years.
Oh, it's going to be measured in years, not months.
Years, definitely.
Yeah, definitely in years. The question is, will we keep selling it? Is where we're. Yeah. Well, that kind of is supporting it, isn't it?
If you node lock, you've got a PC on a mill, and a PC on a lathe, and a PC on a plasma cutter.
Yep.
Am I going to be able to get 3 nodes, or is that 3 licenses?
You will be able to get 3 licenses, which is a node for each one. And the reason you can get them is you're not cutting for money, right? It's a hobby. Yeah. So, no problem.
Okay, if I've got one machine I'm cutting for money, and the others that I'm not cutting for money because I'm playing with them, that, can you intermix like that? Because I may make some prototype parts for my engineering business, but I don't do plasma cut parts, and I don't do lathe parts.
And it's on the, I'll say that, it's on the honor system as well.
Yeah, no, that's what I say, I make money off of some of it, so I want to pay for it. But I don't want to get locked to, oh, well, you have one professional license, therefore you have to have them all that.
No.
Okay.
It's all based on the honor system. I mean, if you want to buy a hobby and you want to go try and run your business off of it, and then you call these guys and tell them that you know what you're going to get is, geez, I wish I could sit here and talk on the phone with you, but if you want to pay for us to do this, we'll do it. I mean, because you're talking salaries and everything else. This costs a lot of money. I've been fighting
I know exactly what you mean.
to do it. Yeah. Because this one really relies on the community to be self-supporting. And because of that, we're not banning it. We're going to, in all intents and purposes, give away the software. You don't want to pay what it costs us to develop it.
So that's good. It is. It's on the honor system. We're not trying to hunt anybody down. It's if you need that level of support where you need us to help you, that's what industrial support. That's the real big difference.
Yeah,
the cost is covering our support.
We run a very wide gamut of machines right now. We have some machines that are selling for $130,000 with our stuff on it. And these guys call up and we get an earful if something isn't right. And then we got the home hobbyist, which is very laid back, mind, understanding. Frankly, you guys are a lot better to work for. So, this is a very hard environment and unfortunately is going to require it. So we're trying to start pulling those out and making it different.
So as a hobbyist, I have a problem. I can still call and say, hey, I got a glitch here. How do I fix it? You'll talk to me a little bit, but not get into detail.
Hey, they really shouldn't even be doing that. It's really meant to be an email in support and stuff like that. And the level of email support will not be any different than it is now. So
Something
if
you
you
just
email
can't
in, you'll
describe
get
in
something
an email, though.
Yeah. Well, you're
Basically,
paying
as
for
a
a convenience.
hobbyist, you go to the forum, right?
Well, the forum or email us directly.
Yeah.
So all that will still be in place. But the phones and stuff, as soon as the phone rings, my guys are done for a number of hours, taking care of stuff for people. So.
Now the industrial version, I think you said 1,200 was the price.
Yep.
Is that a year? Is that
Okay, so the sale price of this stuff is actually going to be version. So and honestly, if you buy a license and it's running on a machine, I don't see you needing to upgrade to the quote-unquote latest and greatest. I guess you could.
As far as the support contract you're asking, right?
Oh,
yeah.
It's $1,200 to buy the license once, then we have not come up with anything for the support contract later on.
Yeah.
That's still up in the air.
So it's
And the hobby will have the same thing. So if you want to get the next latest and greatest thing we're working on, you can purchase some sort of an upgrade, but it's going to be something drastically less than what the license was. So it's not going to be, cost me $200 a year to run it. It's going to be $200. It'll run as long as you want to run. And if you want to get into what we're doing all the time, latest and greatest, it might be $50, $75 or something like that. It's not going to be a phenomenal amount of money. But once again, that's to keep the support guys on you, making sure that when you do it, you're getting the help to get everything you want.
Brian, you're not saying that if you put out a bug fix version.
No.
That's just a bug fix.
That's just a bug fix.
That's free. It'll be if there's a new version would require some fairly significant new feature being added. some fairly decent change to the program before you be up to a new.
Example, kinematics are on our punch list to get added in. When that's added, it'll be version 2. Okay? So if you decide, wow, I really need that for my machine, can't imagine you do, it's already running, but if you want it and you want to play with some of the other stuff we're adding, go ahead and do it. But anything that's version 1 all the way up through, no problem. And probably some of the intro stuff may push over.
Is the feature set any different in the industrial version or just the support?
There are some minute changes, yes. And they will grow drastically differently. So some of the stuff that we're doing for the hobby stuff, the rule is if it was in 3, it's in 4. Okay? So anything you guys had in Mach 3, if we added into the core, you guys get it. If it's something beyond that, some of it I've given you guys and some of it we've pushed off. So as the industrial clients need more and more stuff, that will start differentiating the code base more. So it's going to morph into something else, but they will have the same common roots. Motion control at the core, smoother control and faster response. If you look at how the software is architected, Mach 3 was this monolithic blob. It was a blob of code. This blob had everything from displaying something on the screen to shoving stuff out the parallel port. It did everything. All the scripting, that one executed. What we have done is we have taken that blob and we have broken it into a series of pieces. We'll go over that. And through that, we have allowed much faster response times. If you guys want, we have the router out there running. I'll give you a demonstration with feed rate override, how fast it is. It is incredibly fast. So no more hitting a feed hold and waiting a little bit of time for something to finish, even over Ethernet and stuff. Everything is very, very, very fast, which gives a better tactile feel. Fanuc Type-C cutter compensation in Mach 4. It does anti-gouging. So let's say I have a line right here, and I want to be on this side of the line. It knows it can't go through it. It'll actually go over to the side and radius around and go on the side of the line automatically in cutter comp. So it's a little bit more intelligent. If you want to look up the rules for it, it's Fanuc Type-C. Synchronous up to 6 completely separate coordinate systems. Now, that's where we're getting into kind of the expert stuff. The core has the ability to replicate itself 6 times. So the new stuff has the ability to run one machine and another machine, and through the scripting, look to see where this one is and then avoid it and go, one pass and then let the other one machine. So you can have 2 heads working on one thing or coming in 90 degrees to each other, or running multiple turrets on a lathe. So those are some of the more advanced features that we added in that said, this is really industrial. I don't know how many of you need twin turret lathes, but I'm guessing it's not many. Asynchronous motion, out-of-band access to control uncoordinated motion. We have added the ability to run your tool changers on out-of-band axes. The out-of-band axis is also stuff for torch height control. You can actually superimpose an axis on top of an axis and jog it up and down. So you can slide your X and your Y axis and your Z axis as the machine is running G-code. That was done for seam following for welding, and it was also done for torch height control. So you have those abilities now. You can also do an out-of-band axis on a different motor and then run a tool changer, so you don't have to use your A axis anymore to run your tool changer. It'll look like something that's totally separate. So you can have your tool changer indexing while it's machining a part. Or put a fan on and cool yourself off. I don't care. Multi-axis work shifts, head shifts, to cutting tool paths, offset holders and fixtures. You have all the fixture offsets that you had before. You also have the ability of something called a work shift. If any of you run a Fanuc, that's a very neat one. You can do all your setup and shift and set up the part 3/4 of an inch above the part. Then when you're all done, do a work shift and put it down onto the material surface. And we actually added another shift register for you, which is called a head shift. So if you want to have a router with 2 spindles, can shift from one to the other, or if you want to use a camera or something else, so you can shift to various heads on your machine. Benny was the one that kind of pushed that one from the UK, given his Galil monstrosity that he created. Remote control of the machinery, IPC. Wow, I don't even know what to say about this. This was Steve's brainchild. It's actually a remote control framework. The screen designer, in theory, we haven't put this into action yet, but you're going to have the ability to write a screen on a separate PC and hook up to the machine that's cutting the part and make your own interface that's on a remote PC. So Ron's tablet, he could actually turn that into something to run his machine from there and hook into the PC that's inside his machine and use the screen design utility. So you can design your own custom pendant interface, if you want to call it that, or monitor or anything else. This was added for us for support reasons, but we're like, wow, this is neat. This is going to add the ability for the customers to do their own remote interfaces.
Through any network, any valid network,
Internet.
wireless or Ethernet or any working network.
I've seen this posted on the forum quite a few times for guys who are running a 6-hour part but want to go in the house and watch their child. They can pull it up on the office computer, watch the process run, so they know
If they
exactly
had a
where we are.
webcam, they can, with sound, they could actually change a feed rate override from the house. Do whatever you want. It's great for bomb manufacturing, right? I mean, if you blow up a lot of tools, maybe this is the thing for you. New toolpath display, it's a lot faster. The load times are, gosh, we were
Orders of magnitude.
orders of magnitude faster load times. Steve and I, when we first started loading files, oh my gosh, we're timing it. They go and run another software and time it. Like, this is cool.
It was really funny because you start out and you think something went wrong. You loaded that fast and you're like, man, that was right. Go ahead and change it. You know, it worked. Nice improvement.
New screen layout, easily customized screen modification tools. We'll go over that. The screen design is built into the screen, which Steve curses me over, and I think it's still cool. But that's part of what's taken a little bit more time for the development, is to make that interface a little bit easier for you. Now, this is what we were talking about with the monolithic build internally. Hopefully this isn't getting too deep, but I kind of feel we owe you a little bit of an explanation on what we did. We have the Mach4, everything all built into one, monolithic. Now as we come over here, you see we have the static interface, the custom programming screens. This would be the Mach dynamic GUI. The remote interface, the core is sitting right here, and then other things come down like Modbus, motion devices, parallel port, whatever. Those are all residing at this level down here. So as you can see, it's all constructed of pieces. So when you look in the plugins directory, you'll see motion devices, Modbus, all that other stuff. The core is really a container, you know, has all the trajectory planners in it, all that other stuff. And then this interface is just GUI, but it can actually do about anything these others can do. So that's how it's kind of put together. So what we did, the very first thing we built was this, and then we built a simulation device, and then we had to see what it was doing and drive it, so we built a static interface, and then we got so we could do stuff like this, a parallel port, and now we're back up here doing this. So that's why it didn't all get done at once, because we had to build all those modules.
Like an Ethernet smooth stepper, is that motion devices or?
Yep, and that's what we're running out there on the router right now.
So you got a smooth stepper, Ethernet smooth stepper built for Mach4, it'll run Mach4 will run it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. The Ethernet one. Greg hasn't done a USB version of the driver, but he did say he probably will, over the plugin side.
Okay, so Warp 9 has already worked with you.
Yep.
Okay.
Vital Systems has their motion controller working. Greg Carey has theirs working. We have a couple other OEMs that are working on it right now, and we had to do all the documentation and everything, so it took us a little while.
The glue interface, go ahead.
What's that?
The glue
The Galil? Yeah, that started as well.
started.
Well, actually,
We showed the Galil running at,
IMPS.
yeah, IMTS.
Yeah,
That was
it
the
works.
first plug-in, but it's kind of been put on the back burner while we're taking care of other things.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's the one we're going to have to do.
Yeah.
You know, so like Greg, he's taking care of Ward 9's building his plug-in for Mach4, and it can happen at the same time in parallel, but now we kind of had to stop on kind of making the Galil plug-in work, move forward on the GUI and get everything on that stuff fixed. Then the Galil plug-in can follow right along.
Yeah, because we have to write the Galil plugin, so it's going to take a little bit after that. This is the static interface. This is what you'll go up and see on the router, out running, out on the floor. We're going to go grab another monitor and put it on the other side so you can see a little better. But this would be like the hobby and the light interface. Any other questions on that stuff right now?
Have you had any conversations with CS Labs, plug-in from CS
Yep.
Have they started on one, or
We sent them all the documentation, but
is that interface done to the plugins now, or is that still?
it's pretty well flushed out. Actually, very well flushed out.
About Centroid and Ajax.
I talked to someone from there, but I don't know. I didn't send them any information. That doesn't mean we won't talk.
Well, they do have the Mach4 integration.
This does away with screen 4 and the shutter screen design.
It's all internal.
How about writing macros from
Yeah, so okay, that's actually a really good thing. So another thing that we added, the scripting language is actually a plugin, which is kind of odd. So let's say you decide that we really need to have some C-based scripting. I think it's a great idea. But we can add or change the scripting based on that, and we chose Lua as the one we're starting. The reason we chose Lua is it's cross-platform, and it doesn't require a lot of formatting. It's kind of VB-ish, but it is. It's a bunch faster. The Lua scripting, I'll display a Lua script as soon as this thing gets done thinking about it.
Do you know if there's any, I would call it, online educational training things for Lua or anything that you can get, like a
We are going to be
course
we're
that you
going to
can
be
buy?
putting out some examples, and I think that's probably the best way to look at it. Is most of what you're going to do is a couple of ifs and then mostly function calls into what we do. So going on full-on Lua programming is going to bake your noodle because it's
You're going to get out there.
metatable based.
You'll find some of this stuff that's going to be on, something like World of Warcraft and some,
Yeah.
the gamers here, they use that. But the reason they use Lua is because it's fast. I mean, it's really, really, extremely fast.
There's some good manuals written on it.
But if you just search on it, go read up on the videos, it might carry you down a road that you don't want to go.
The university group down there that developed it, done some really fine presentations.
Oh, nice.
Will not or macro be compatible with Mach4?
What are we using to replace brains? Because I know my machines,
Lua.
so the Lua can take care of all the brains.
And that's why Lua is so cool. Lua is as fast as brains.
And
And you get all the scripting capabilities. You can do as much or as little as you want.
the logic that you can come up with in the script is a lot better than what you come up with that little brain editor, sometimes it's pretty confining, if you know what I mean? Lou's going to go, and we thought about several things where we just get right now we've got a PLC Lou running in the back of the configurable GUI. And it's just top down, top down, top down, top down. So if you put in your script little blocks, it's as easy or easier than any kind of PLC program you could do. And no more brains. So we don't have to look at two different things. So what do you have in your scripts versus what do you have in your brains? You always have conflicts, to use both of them.
difference is from a brains and I/O perspective. I showed you where everything was modules now. Now when the modules register, we'll go over how you configure the software. But it actually allocates whatever it needs for memory in the core so that you no longer have one device stepping on another device. So if you had a Modbus device and you had a Modbus device, he had a Modbus device, you want to connect them all on the same machine, and they all needed certain coils or something, you can bring them all into, they all get uniquely named so that you don't have things stomping on each other. So that's all been taken care of as well. No, I won't answer your question. Go ahead.
It's going to be technical, but it's not intended to be hardball. In the past, we had two different concepts, scripts that were triggered events and scripts that just ran continuously. Still going to have that concept?
Yes. The one that runs continuously is, we're calling it a PLC script, and that really is at the GUI level.
And the other question is, will the Lua language have access to mutexes or semaphores to coordinate locks with the rest of the system?
It is internally doing it already.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you explain that one?
Yeah. It's not something where we're going to be able to say, and now you could fire up your own little LED and use that as a mutex.
Or even set your own.
Right. And make your own, but I don't think as far as the core signals and everything coming back from input and output, that's already done behind the scenes.
Well, what I'm trying to do is look out for ways to prevent some of these situations we've experienced in Mach4, where there are processes that were like sort of suspended or blocked, and you don't realize it, and they become unblocked, and all of a sudden the machine moves by itself.
I don't think we'll have an issue with that.
You don't think we're going to see any more of those?
I think it's lots of things are changing. The inputs and scripting updates as it happens. So motion controller has an input that goes high and it feeds directly to Mach. There's no waiting around.
So if I write two scripts that need to interact with each other with a, quote, mutex, then we would do that by creating an LED and looking at it.
Actually, you're not even really creating an LED. You're going to create some thing to go back.
Do a flag. You do a global variable. You can say, okay, this is my timer mutex or whatever. Just make sure something doesn't step on another one. And one script sets it, the other one waits.
And if you really want to get technical, you have the full WX stuff as well. So you can write your own WX mutex as well in Lua. So you can
I think he answered it mostly with the global variable.
Yeah. Well, if you want a real hardcore one, you can make that too.
Well, that is one thing you've got now is a true global scope. Now, this is in the configurable GUI. Right? And a lot of this functionality is provided by the GUI, not the core. Because the core is, where you go in doing the trajectory, transferring inputs and outputs. So a lot of this functionality is in the GUI. And the core GUI allows for a screen global script. You know how in Mach4 you have a screen set? Well, now that you've got a screen set, it will actually house the layout of the screen, any of the bitmaps that you use to create a screen, those separate directories. You don't have to worry about keeping up with anything in that. And all your scripts, all in that one set file. And then a global script page, so anytime you run that screen, it will load those globals and initialize anything to whatever value you put, and then you can change them at any script, anywhere in that whole GUI, say a reaction to a button press, or maybe LED enable goes high. The sky's the limit there. It's going to be very, very flexible. I think that's a lot of the people that are using Mach4 kind of gone a little, pushed it to its edge, and it will help that out. Give Steve all of some mutexes.
Have you figured any clever way around the loss of focus issues?
example.
A situation where, you're sitting there ready to click on something, and a dialog box pops up over here. So now the machine focus is there, and clicking on this over here doesn't make anything happen.
Yeah, we fixed that. Just we don't have any focus anywhere anytime.
Yeah, this is unfortunately my little screen thing, I was playing.
Yeah.
But, so we've got this, if you go under View, Lua script, these are the script that's running in the background. So you can see I have a page ID, a screen ID.
Those are global variables.
Yeah, these are globals. Okay. And then we have function e-stop click script, and then function button 3 left down script. This gets built on the fly. You didn't actually write it. So if we come down here and click e-stop, which I have half off the screen, time 1. So this is incrementing that variable every time. So that's pushing up this global variable. Thanks. Page ID. So page ID is getting incremented every time by 1. So you have some global variables you can share across buttons. And then we have edit screen. So we just kicked it into edit mode. And I can look at my default screen where it's got a button. I can look at page 1. I can look at this notebook that I have and the different panels that are on it. So and then I can grab buttons and slide them around. And then each button, what is the modular resolution of all that?
When you figure out what it's done to your icons, they're all on your desktop.
Yes.
They're all over the place.
So we can take this button right here, and it's enabled. We can change the text of it to, I don't know, button 2. And then we can change the text color. You get like color pictures. So there's in green. You can change the button script. Go to something that's a little more difficult to read. And then we'll change the background of the button to be black. And then we really ought to increase the point size of it. And grab the button and resize it. So as you can see, you have way more control over these buttons.
But notice the new graphic objects you've got, like the tab dialog. There was no way to create
so
that.
this is a script tab dialog. You can do anything you want inside that tab. Now, this button has the ability of doing events. So we click up here, we have a left down action, left up action, left down script, left up script, a click script, and then a go to a page.
And action is basically a stock hand action.
Yep. So you have cycle start, speed holds. So you have all these various functions that are things that you might want to do that you don't actually want to write the scripts for. We did a bunch of canned ones for you so that if you're not a programmer and you want to make some changes and put a button on that does something, you can quite literally drag a button, put it down, rename it, click one of these events, actions, and the action code will get done. So I think that's probably a lot easier than it ever was in 3.
Brian, your drag and drop was great because now you don't have to know what was the shortcut code, what is the OEM code for that button. You plug it in over here and go find out what it was. You go click, click, and it's done.
Yep. So the DROs, same thing. This DRO right here is DRO2. You've got, this isn't updated. This is an old version. You have, it's DRO codes. So you have all the DRO codes. So you can set this to be any of these things, the current G code line, current velocity, X velocity. So you have all these various things. You can look at motor positions, motor velocities.
And you change LED colors?
We haven't got to those yet. We've got all the coloring, underlining, right, left, justified, centered. You get to do anything you want. Okay?
Formats.
Yeah,
formats.
And if you want to add an LED, you add an LED, drag it over. Now this LED, so there's your LED. You can set it to blink.
Annoy people with blinking.
So you can set it to be a blinking LED, and you can control the rate. So if you want to have things blink at different rates on the screen, you can. So, and if you want to turn it off, you can. All these items here that you see that I'm changing, you have access through the scripting language to change any of them. So you can change the position of an LED, you can change the blink rate of an LED, whether it's on, whether it's off, everything. You can hide it, show it.
Did you get actions on DROs?
Yeah. Oh, no, we haven't done the action on enter for a script.
On enter on a DRO,
yeah,
the script would run, because in the wizards in Mach 3, you had to wait until you push the button to calculate, and then say your DRO value is invalid.
Yep.
And we will be able to, on update, when the DRO changes,
yes,
a script will run, right then could say, you know, invalid.
No, okay, so you didn't update.
Yeah, I haven't done an update. So since I updated last on this, he'd already done it. So that's my bad. I gotta go back to the repository and update. So I think, what else do we have? Oh, the G-code list. Oh, if you want to add.
Look at the actions on the LED.
Yeah, they're signals.
Signals, yeah.
So you can select signals that you want to tie it to.
And go to the actions tab.
There's nothing there.
There's not, oh, you didn't update.
Yeah, I didn't update.
I'll put in a function, you know, what should this LED run if it changed? You can go run a script on an event. It just happens every time. So you can have multiple.
So you could hook an LED to an external hardware line, and if that happens, it triggers the script.
Yep.
That's your brain, basically.
Yeah, well, that's what I say. The Lewis taking place all the brain stuff.
And it's much easier to kind of put your head around too, because you're right there at the button and say, well, what happens when this LED that I've got, you know, marked, you know, error? And well, you have a script that puts the whole machine in a, you know, in a certain state. You know.
Basic PC
I don't know. How's your machine run, Steve? Okay, the truth is, it probably can be drastically better. So, up here we have this thing. We have refresh interval. This controls how fast the DROs update and how fast the toolpath updates. And this is the PLC interval in milliseconds. So you actually have the ability to detune the software's interface to make it so you can run a lower end PC. So we have given you that control.
I mean, it might get, you know, chunky updates on your toolpath, but if you want to live with that, then hate upgrade yourself. You know, here's a machine. It does work. I'd rather deal with that.
So you're saying you can run a 486 with this?
Yeah, it won't load.
Won't load?
No, it doesn't have a USB port.
Well, it said it was 20 for a heater then.
No. We should be able to keep the same specs.
Gigahertz.
If not, maybe possibly do a little better, but we don't have anything to back that up. Yeah, but we did give you the ability to slow things down.
Now, with the ability to slow things down, do you have any benefits from a fast PC, quad core, tons of memory, or Mach 3 really wasn't geared to use the new high-end computers?
You will. You can bump this refresh interval up, and your DROs will look faster than. I mean, I've had mine cranked up, and you can see the DROs changing. I mean, it's better than any hardware-based DRO you can get. It's fast, so you can do anything you want.
Able to run a 10 millisecond refresh rate.
No, specifically, because now you get quad core, all these multiple core processors. So are you multitasking something on this core, something on that core?
Yes, this is multi-threaded, multi-everything.
Okay.
And believe it or not, everything, the core resides in the middle, and it doesn't do any updates. There is no more update loop in Mach 4. Mach 3, like if you did something in a script you want to wait like 100 milliseconds, this doesn't use any of that. There is no update loop. So everything is event-driven and pushed up through. And the only thing that is semi an update loop is the motion controller is requesting data, and that kind of increments things internally and pushes it through time. So it's the motion device is really driving the core. Yep.
Is Mach 4 now 64-bit software or still 32?
No, it's 32-bit, and I don't know if there's any benefit to 64. Is there, Steve?
The only benefit is, you know, if you have 12 bazillion line G-code file or something, you know, if you outrun the memory limits of 32 bits with a G-code file.
I don't think anybody's done that yet.
And yeah, it would
We have to be careful buying a new PC because they want to sell you 64.
Oh, it'll run. This is a 64-bit PC. It'll run fine. Everything you see out on the floor, we're running 64-bit.
But you're running a 32-bit install, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You installed Windows 32-bit. You didn't install 64-bit.
No, it's got 64-bit OS. It'll run a 32-bit app.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, no problem.
So we'll run on a Windows 7 64-bit.
We'll run a Windows 8 64 on the router.
Now, with the caveat of the printer port, if you're ever going to use the parallel port, it's going to have to be version of the 32-bit version of the operating system.
And we do have a parallel port driver, R201. Honestly, I see the parallel port is pretty much about the end of its life. The motion controllers are coming down so much in price. The quality of motion is fantastic. We're going to support it, but I don't know how long it's really going to hang in there and be something that's viable. Yep.
As far as scripting, I'm coming more from the industrial side. I know I have image welder type of images in the apartments.
Oh, yes.
Trigger between various and so forth.
Yep. So we have things called, oh, that's a really good thing you asked, actually. So right here we have something called bitmap button. So you click on that, you can grab this bitmap button, slide it over. One of the things you can do is grab an image. I don't have the images. So here's an image of a screen. But if I want to add images, we have an image manager. So you go to the manager, you can add an image, browse to the image somewhere on my PC, which since Mach 3's on here, we'll pick on that. We're going to the mouse. And we'll just grab this button. Okay. So now I can look in my image manager and see, oh, I have a cycle start button. Hit OK. I don't know if this was fixed yet, but I think you have to save the screen set and go out of edit mode. But now, this button right here, I can look and I've got a cycle start button.
And through scripting, I do a different image.
Yep. Because anything that's in here, you can change any problem. And that was done by design. So I mean, you can change the Z order, anything.
Still do a background bitmap?
You can. I had a screen that Todd did that had that made stuff go bare. I don't know if I still get that. This is just an image, but same thing. It uses the same image thing. Yeah, so that's the Modbus setup thing. You can resize it.
Speaking of Modbus, does this allow for multiple Modbus devices now?
It does.
Ethernet and serial.
I put it on page 1. That was terrible. The default page. Anyways, so you can do multiple serials, multiple TCPs. You can do anything you like. The other thing we should look at is in here, we were running something called Eagle Mill Sim. Oh, we were running what for a screen set? What do I have for set? This is my actual development machine, so it's a disaster. Yeah, it's this one. This is actually has all the images and everything already in it. So if you want to exchange a set file or download a set file for 4, it actually has all the images and everything in it. You don't need to like, zip up multiple things. This actually is a zip file. You can actually
Brian, can you edit the toolpath with them, make that large?
Yep, you can do anything you want with that. So inside of here, there's a screen.xml, and inside the image things are the 2 images that I had. So everything's packaged up nice and neat, so you can exchange. That you'll use the PLC update loop, and you'll just write that right into Lua.
Is the PLC update loop in the same instance as the screen's Lua, or is it a different?
It's provided, that's functionality from the GUI.
Yep.
It's not coming through the core.
Yeah, that's just the screen is doing that whole functionality, not the
So
core.
in a sense, the screen is kicking off the PLC update loop.
Yep.
As a process of the screen.
It's threaded off. It's its own thing, so it's not bound by the like
But that's
how
why
long
you
your
can-
OpenGL takes update.
That's why you can see global variables and things like that. So you could, say, have a button script, and when you push the button, it actually affected your macro phone.
Yes.
Changed
Yes.
its cycle.
Those global variables,
stopped it,
everything's
or
the
started
same.
it, yeah.
I actually did that. I put a counter on the screen. I had it counting up, and I had a 0 button. I could 0 it, and watch it go to 0, and then count back up. Then I made it so it would swap from positive to negative, what it was adding. So it would start adding negative numbers, so you count down, flip the button, and see it count back up. So yeah, you can interact with all that stuff. And write to the DRO on the screen, make the LED flash. It's pretty fun. Unfortunately, it's all like desktop. All well programmed.
Brian, is it still open loop in terms of using encoder signals from
That
sound
is going to be at the hardware level. We're not doing that. You could do position check stuff and all that other stuff, but
the pin loops and the error file encoded with the encoder, it's going to require real time with Windows. It's not going to have.
Can't do it. Well, what about the frame aspect of it? Be able to hold together.
that's really hardware based again. But what we are allowing the motion controller to do is to request data. So as the frequency of the software or the motion control device and how fast it can request data, the faster that becomes, the faster we react. So in theory, we could go on to a Linux PC with real-time kernel, and we could actually do real-time stuff. Because we have real-time, it becomes real-time. So we can't control that, unfortunately. It's really part of at the hardware level, what they can and can't do.
You didn't bring a Linux instance.
I did. Next year. There's always next year, maybe. Other things that we added, let me get back. I'm going to open up WX Mach. This is the static interface that you'll see out on the floor. This thing is terrible.
Yeah.
It doesn't have better resolution than that.
Well, your projectors are limited. It's like a 800 by something.
600.
Yeah, that's at best is what that projector is capable of.
It's terrible.
Well,
I can't even.
See, that's why we talked about bringing a giant TV. But,
The problem is if you reset your screen resolution, you might have a hard time making it look at it.
Oh, it's already better.
Yes.
800 by 600. I haven't done that in years.
The minimum resolution for this program, the static interface is
At 24
68. There's no getting smaller, so it's going to have a hard time seeing all of those.
Okay, so we've got some other things in here. We can go under operator, fixture offsets. This is a brand new fixture table that we made for you guys. You can go in and grab something. You can add, say I wanted to tweak my Z up 10,000, so you can go over plus. You can count it up. So that's more like a FANUC. You can just set it, and you can actually go off from where the machine thinks it is and hit the measure button and calculate it based off your machine coordinates. Okay? And you've got, here is the work shift. This shift takes all the coordinate system offsets that you have and shifts them all. The best example of this would be if you wanted to have a fixture, you wanted to dry run the part above the part, you could go in here and put like a 2-inch lift in the Z and run it 2 inches above the part. No, it has no, you can still use all the G52s and everything else. This shifts all of that up. So you can use all that stuff in this. This is basically the same thing, except this doesn't show in the graphics window, and it's a secondary place to put it for adding shifts for multiple heads. So if you have a 2-headed router, or even a 5-headed router, you can use this head shift as kind of a tool length offset to move it around. And you've got loads more offsets. This will get shifted into the Customizable GUI. And you've got a new tool table. Same thing with the input measure and stuff. And we've been testing tool length offsets and all that other fun stuff.
How many tools in the tool table?
More than I own. 256. 254.
So that hasn't gone up from Mach, right? Not that I need any more, but I've seen people on the forum say I need 5,000 or whatever it is because of the way you number stuff.
You will be able to load multiple tool tables. So my thing is load a different table.
I think that's where the guy wants to make some kind of a hierarchy. He wants all of his 100 tools to be flat bottoms and all of his 200 tools to be, you know, pointed tools, and then you wind up wanting the ridiculous tool on it.
Right.
Just because you're building an encoding system.
No comment. So here's all your settings. Default modes, okay, that's pretty normal. Motor tuning screen looks pretty familiar. This wasn't lifted out, this is actually rewritten to make it look familiar. So, axis mapping, this gets a little bit different. You enable, so now you get drop downs of what you can do. And notice, I've only got whatever I have available for motors. So if I had more motors over here, this drop down would have more motors to select from. So I actually have another motor available, so I can select it if I want. The homing order, so start with the Z, do the X, then the Y. Now inputs, this is also where it gets fairly interesting. It looks very familiar. We've gotten rid of something called port and something named pin. It is now device input name. The reason it is now we have a drop-down list. If I had Modbus in, Modbus would show up in this drop-down, and then I can select what it has available for inputs. And everything is named via the plugin. So as the hardware manufacturers get away from parallel type interfaces, and they make their pinouts more static or the terminals on the breakout boards fixed, you will get the pin names here. So that'll propagate up through, so that you don't have to go look up what was that. No, you can do it here. So that should make it a lot easier for people to set up. Same thing happens on the input. So you can say sim, and I want that to be enabled 1. Spindle, you've got multiple spindle ranges. There's actually 20 of them. I only discovered 10. I don't know why, but through this spindle range, you can do what your feedback ratio is. You can change the acceleration and deceleration times for different ranges. So different gear ranges might ramp up differently. And then you have the max RPM, min RPM. And I'm going to look at a script real quick about that too as soon as I'm done. The toolpath now has the ability to change all the colors and stuff on the fly. So you can change it to be whatever you want. Brett likes pink, so we use Is the Indian? Yeah. Oh, come on. Oh, that's right. Good. So you can create whatever you want for coloring in the background.
And multiple motion devices be attached to one session?
Yes. Only one can be used in the
Coordinated motion.
coordinated motion. You can't like distribute. Ask your question better.
Okay, I think the answer is there can only be one device doing coordinated motion, but perhaps others doing out of band.
Correct. Or you can have multiples doing other coordinate systems that are on their different instances. So you could run 6 different boards, but you'd be running 6 different G-code files simultaneously, right? Or you could take another one and then turn it into running out-of-band access. Did I make that clear?
Say something more, because we talked about that. You could have one instance of Mach. Say you're in a production shop and you got 4 little mills. They're all making the same part, or they're running the same kind of mill. You could hook up those 4 mills and have, but they'd be running one G-code file. But the 4 mills would be running independently.
They would run in 4 separate G-code files. They would be running from the same interface.
Okay, the same single PC could have 4 mills hooked up to it, each running their own code. And this guy starting and stopping and changing the code and all of that.
You could actually pass the part from one to the other if you had air clamps. Shift one part over, have it slide over, clamp, unclamp, slide. So it could like shift from machine to machine, and then they can.
So the screw machine company that I work with has got 2 KXs in there making parts and 2 PCs.
That
this guy running back and forth between the 2 PCs.
That wasn't really a good fit for that. It's really made for automation for like manufacturing cells. Yeah. It's really a cell manufacturing tool. Or a turntable machine where the machine indexes this one machine and you want to have 2 heads working on one place at it, and then it's going to index again and this one's going to take off and run. That's for that stuff where everything's tied together.
Like a mill turn.
Yeah, mill turn. Yeah. Totally outside of the hobby world. Well, I know, I say that and then I'm going to come in next year and somebody's going to be like, all right, so I built a twin turret lathe. Where's my software? Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll donate the software to the first person that builds a twin turret tool changing lathe, auto feeders, and I want to see a chicken bear too.
Brian, were you saying you could have 20 different spindles back on the spindle pole?
20 different ranges. So,
range of speeds?
Pulleys, gears, ranges. First, second, third.
Yeah.
So here's some Lewis script, and I'm actually going to get to talk about this. So this is what I used on my milling machine back at the shop that I've been testing with. I got an Eagle, it's a Analam old CNC mill that I ripped off and put ours. But you see at the top I have an MC get instance. That MC in Lua is kind of like the namespace, I don't know how else to say it, or the library. The library. So MC means Mach4, machine controller, whatever you want to call it. So Mach4 dot MC get instance. So that reports when this thing gets called, who called me? So if I have 2 different machines running and I want to say, I want to make sure you're stopped, I need to know when the script runs. Did you call or did you call? So you know who called this script at this time. And then we have MC Spindle get commanded RPM, the instance. So everything you see us call for has an instance to it. And that's so it knows who in the heck called me, so it knows which interpreter or which module, which one of the cores that's running actually called. So pretty much everybody's going to have zeros in it for the hobby stuff. We can just copy what we have. So we're going to give away stuff like this and have a whole archive of this stuff that you can go and put in, and we'll have candidates that will just automatically work as well. And then we have MC Spindle get override. So you get the override, and then I take the override and multiply by the commanded RPM to get a new commanded RPM. Then I pull out what the current range is, and then what the current maximum RPM for that spindle range is. This seems probably a little complex to change your spindle RPMs, but so many people want to do special things. example, if you had some wide delta thing, you had to throw some contacts or something like that to get to a different range or do something else, you want to do it, go for it. I don't care. It's all here. You can modify it at will. So then we come up to this. We say Modbus. This came from a Modbus plugin. Modbus 0, analog spindle out is what I named it. I look to see if I can find that register, so I do an MGC register get handle. And then we check to see if we actually found the register down here. And if the max RPM is equal to 0, we tell people to set up their spindle because they didn't set up the spindle. And then if all that stuff passes, we found the analog register for the Modbus device. We calculate max RPM commanded divided by maximum times 4096, because that's what my PLC uses. And I come up with this analog value. And then I do an MC register, and I set the register to that analog value. Kind of complex, kind of programming, but on the other hand, I just type Modbus in, and if I open this up and you send this to us, we know exactly what you're doing, we can help you through the process. And anybody that's trying to sell an analog board that runs off Modbus can all of a sudden do all this stuff. Because they could rename this to be something else. And then it would propagate through all the macros they gave you. So that's what I mean, things don't get stepped on. So, any questions on the scripting? It doesn't look, you don't have to put these at the end of the lines either. We do because it's habit.
Yeah, the almighty semicolon.
Yeah, the almighty semicolon. Code just doesn't look right without it. You don't have to add them. And you notice there's no curly braces or anything like that. And this is actually the Lua editor that comes with Mach4. You can debug from it. And this is the same editor that you'll get inside the GUI interface as well. Try your PLC update loops or whatever else you want to do.
Not really related to this, but what about probing in like Dave Begbie's Mach standard mill kind of stuff?
If Dave wants to write this stuff, he can.
But so do you have any probing stuff in your?
We will be writing more and more stuff as time goes on. That's going to be what Brett and Andrew do in their idle time.
But the basic G31 probe cycle works now like it should.
Right.
Do we have hardware supports it yet?
I mean, we put it in Glue. It hasn't made it the Glue plugin, but if the hardware supports it, yeah, we can do any kind of latching on a probe.
The screen design part, like Dave did, has to do with in which direction should I probe and how far should I go and all those kind of things. But the fundamental probe cycle is basic.
Yeah, well, you know, also they have some scripts behind the scenes that are running. That will have, he'll have to convert it. You know, that if he wants to. I mean, they're BB scripts, and we're running Lua. He's going to have to port it.
So you're not working with him at all. So it's up to him.
Yeah, I mean, we work with him, and we'll help him, you know, move it over. But we're not going to go rewrite his whole screen set.
Right.
Yeah. But we work with that. I talked to him on pretty good.
Yeah, I chatted with him not too long ago.
With Mach4, will it throw up an error if you call a macro that isn't there? Because with Mach3, you call up a macro, and if it's not there, it just ignores it, it does nothing. It just carries on as everything on the side.
Right now, it pops an error message and keeps working. Only because, you know, what happens if you don't want those? We could add a more verbose mode if you want. It wouldn't be bad.
Another question, is it possible to have Mach3 and Mach4 live on the same machine?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously, you can't have them pointed further towards the same controller at the same time. You know, you wouldn't be able to run Mach3 against your parallel port and Mach4 against your parallel port at the same time.
Not at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't run them simultaneously, but they can be on the same machine.
Coexist.
Yeah, as a conversion thing, you take your regular Mach3 machine, install 4, and start playing with it, but your 3 instance is still there.
Yeah, it's still
You don't run them at the same. You can't on Windows run them at the same time anyway. So Well, I suppose you could try to open door.
Yep.
I think you mentioned you're using WX for windowing.
Yep.
Is that true? So
Yeah, so you have,
from the
from here, you can type WX dot, do it in
you've
your
got the
wall.
full WX library.
Full WX library, yep. So the question he's asking is there's a whole framework underneath there. You can actually make something as complex as this editor from the scripting language. It is very powerful. Unfortunately, not very fancy.
It's advanced. You kid. I mean, you figure out they'll have some scripts and stuff like this. You can check it and test it, but it's a little abstract when it comes with the script.
I think I'd say though, the things that we had available in VB can be done in Lua very easily.
Oh, very
You don't
easily.
need to get into all of this stuff. You can go a whole mile deeper with things, but if all you wanted to do is take your screen set and go button by button and convert them from VB, the VB simply couldn't do anything that's into the complex realm here.
But somebody doing a screen set or something like that, like David Bagger, you know, he builds up some super duper function that somebody's looking for, he can get in there and pretty much provide anything.
Yeah. Here's an example of one that I made that actually will populate it. It'll put up a tool table, and you can add and remove different items from the tool table, and this is all the code for it. So it's not simple. But it wasn't that bad. I mean, anybody that programs is going to look at that and be like, oh, neat. So we wanted to give a place that people that are hobbyists, that have a programming background, that want to enhance things and make tools and stuff like that, they're all here. You can do anything you want. You don't have to buy a compiler or anything like that.
Do you interact with OPC? Is that in the industrial area? Do you have an OPC server, or do you communicate with, say, something like a calculator server?
Possibly that kind of functionality might be handled by a plugin when you're writing.
Yeah. The plugins also can be written in many languages. So let's say you wanted to do your own GUI. You could actually use C#, VB. You can use, we use WX in C++ because we have to go cross-platform. But you're welcome to use anything you want if you want to. We do have like some NDA stuff too, like give away the keys to the kingdom. Any other questions on
Did
that?
you just say that the plug-in interface is an NDA code? So,
Do you know why?
well, yeah, I guess there's some pretty interesting stuff.
No, it has nothing to do with how interesting it is. It's about supporting.
Boring.
Well,
What's the question you get?
example.
Have you the plug-in interface out there to the world?
Well, no,
Yeah.
let's look at it this way. We've got these, what is it, the latest thing was like the $25 or $35 USB breakout board.
Right.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So you can get these phenomenally cheap breakout boards that have motion controls built in them, I guess. But they don't work. What are you going to say to me? Right, I wish this thing worked. I wish I knew who made it. I mean, we can't do that and say we're going to support things well if we don't know who's doing it.
So you're not going to put this development kit up on the web to download? But if somebody comes and talks
And
about
we're doing it to protect people like Greg Carey or whoever wants to build a motion control device from having the Chinese just come in and give the stuff away and not support it. We can't do that because that's just going to make for a bad user experience for people with our stuff. I mean, you can't.
But when the first Chinese company comes along and says, we want to make boards, you got to treat them like an OEM, like any other OEM.
Oh, and we will. But they're also going to have to be they're going to be held to the same standard.
With a license.
Yeah.
And you know, so part of the other reason is all these plugins that they put out there, and here's what's going to be a bad thing that's going to happen with the Mach 3 and Mach 4. Everybody's got all this range of plugins that they can choose from. They can download from the plugin page. Some of them haven't been maintained for 5 years. You can still download it. It still works. But who's going to write that code for, duplicate that in Mach 4? we don't even have access to the code. We don't know who did it anymore hardly.
Yeah.
And, yes, sir.
So is there any sort of business scheme around that then for people to do that? And, I mean, that's one of the problems with a lot of these plugins that didn't get supported, and you download them, you try them, and they may not work as intended.
Well, that's what we've got the kind of the, I don't know, what we would call it open, but, you know,
the closed open policy.
Where anybody that says, okay, I want to do this plugin, we'll say, great, we'll work with you, make that plugin.
And they'll have to provide us with source code, right?
Well, not necessarily. It doesn't have to be a technology escrow.
We want some assurance from them that 2 years down the road, the people that have used their plugin are still going to have the ability to use that plugin. You know, he's not just going to drop that.
At least I got a name and some contact information. We'd like to have some dialogue with them to just make sure it's real and not
Then they can charge for that plug-in, and then
if they want. I don't know. If they really want to
I
push
think
it up, they
one
can.
of the Mach's great, but one of the problems I think you will see is on the money flowing, and it's going to keep flowing.
Well, it also gives people the ability to sell added-on functionality. Yes, Steve, you look like
Sooner or later, the API will make it into the wild. Either somebody breaks their terms or somebody reverse engineers it or whatever. Have you considered the possibility of a security mechanism where the driver will register with the core?
We have. We've actually talked about it already. Actually, we got quite a bit of the stuff already. So that very well may get kicked in pretty soon. As part of the NDA thing, part of being able to get your plugin to actually go out and be run by our executable we put out, you're going to have a hash code that, you know, public-private key kind of thing. You're going to have to go against. Yeah, it's already in. I wouldn't want to talk about it, but yeah, we are going to protect it.
I think if you just had a list of ones that you certified or something, and everybody else is in the lab.
Yeah, you say that until the guys on the phone say, what is it? Because people do that to me all the time. They're like, oh, I got this thing. It works great, but I can't do this. Can you help me with it? What color is it? I mean, I don't know anything about it. You know, I start out with a totally non-technical question, so they know where I'm starting from. Oh, yeah.
And here's the thing, you've got 10, you know, approved plugins, and this 11th outlier here, and it happens to do what you want it to do. You're going to go out there and try it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, let me try this and see if I can. And you know, I mean, I would too. If it worked, great, wonderful. But that's kind of the issue, though.
The real thing that's meant to be exchanged like that is the Lua scripting language. Because now it's something that you got the source for, you can play around with it, modify it to what you need. It's meant to be that. I think it's, and truth be known, the Lua scripting language isn't a whole lot different than the API. I mean, it uses the same interface. There are just a bunch of very key things that you don't get access to. You don't really get to register I/O through Lua because you're not going to write it something that reads and writes to a device to register I/O and stuff like that.
Will the Lua scripts always be plain-text, or will it be compiled to the script?
They do get piled to a big code. There are also obfuscators for.
I mean, as far as delivery, let's say I have a place where I want to share it.
You want to change it? We haven't added that. In theory, you can.
So basically, you're requiring the script to be like that.
Because if you really don't want to share it, we would encourage you to put it into a plugin.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same interface.
How does a plugin differ from a script?
It can be compiled in any language.
From your perspective, I don't know. How do you answer that one? One is supposed to be something that's more of a customized kind of a tweak that would be more of a script. When you want something at the plugin level, it would be talking out a port or doing, like Modbus is a plugin, I wrote a serial plugin, the Ethernet Smooth Stepper is a plugin, those, but then to tie those pieces together with one that was scripted. So that's kind of the level that they're at.
Also, plugin is more of a native language, or C++ or C, some kind of you can even use C# or VB, and you just wanted to run on Windows only. But that kind of code is going to have a faster execution time. So that's what you use to pull this motion over time out of the core to send to the motion. Something like that, where maybe a script engine isn't going to be that fast.
Yeah, it's fast, but it's not that fast.
You know, you have the time slice that's running in the middle of 1 millisecond. Script.
So how many axes are coordinated now and how many spindles can run in 4? Has that changed at all? It's still 6 axes?
Pretty much, it's 6 axis coordinated. Spindle stuff, it's one main spindle. If you want to add more of that stuff, you can. Through the miracles of scripting and stuff, you can kind of add all that stuff.
You could add a second fixed rotary.
You could add the controls for it.
One thing now, if you've got a gantry machine, you don't have to use a coordinated axis to run it.
Yeah, so you can have a 6-axis machine and have slave motors, and the slave doesn't count as coordinated motion.
Primary motor.
Yep. So it's 6 axes, not 6 motors.
So
you could use a dozen motors to make 3 axes. I don't care.
And control signals for each one of the motors, the additional motors?
Whoever makes the hardware.
I mean, theory, theory. Think about an axis is a motion in a plane.
Right.
I mean, you can have 5 motors driving this axis in motion in that plane. And so with Mach 3, we think of axis being...
Axis and motor
are separate. Yeah, same.
Well, they're the same thing. It's for separate.
Completely separate.
And also, as you add slaves on, the controller will take the least common denominator.
So that's how you deal with a plasma or something like it that's got our table that's got two motors driving.
Yep, and you don't have to have like the same count. It doesn't have to be like, oh, this one uses, you could have a screw in a rack if you don't want it.
Totally different step. And then still drive the axis inside the axis.
Yep, screw mapping's all added. Backlash is added. It actually uses third order for backlash compensation. That's all done. So we're actually quite a little bit further than we've been putting on, but we wanted to really get, because we were forging new ground everywhere, we had to just do it and see if we could, what we could get done. We couldn't just say, oh, try this. It's almost to the point where you can try it.
Reading the bashing that you've received over the months, I'm surprised you still with it, because people are really not very nice to you.
Fixed.